Thank you so much, Adam. He didn't look at me in a good way when he said that. I no longer trust him. Now, I have to confess that I really enjoy political campaigns. This is slightly masochistic. Generally speaking, people do not enjoy listening to politicians bullshit us into believing whatever half-baked campaign promise they're making, and then try to manipulate us into giving them our votes. But I like political campaigns because I love rhetoric. This obsession with rhetoric does have to do with the fact that I am a public speaking coach, as well as a speaker who speaks about speaking. So anything that helps us make speaking a bit better is pretty darn good in my books. Now, when it comes to learning about rhetoric, political campaigns is a fantastic way to do it, because you get to watch it at work in a boilerplate type environment, and done both very well with grace and elegance, and very badly when the person ends up making a complete ass of themselves, and then we get to watch it again on the news, usually repeatedly. It's an awful lot of fun. Now, when we watch political campaigns and try to take into consideration the rhetoric that they're using, what we're doing is paying attention to the chess game that is human communication. We get to learn about what's working in the backgrounds to make us believe the things that the politicians want us to believe, or not. Now, this can be used for good, and that can be used for evil. It all depends on the person wielding the rhetoric. But I do think that if we take a bit of time to learn about rhetoric, we're able to use it for our own purposes. First up, it allows us to become much more critical voters, because like I said, we start to learn how to recognize the chess game behind what it is that they're saying. It also can help us become more persuasive speakers. And we all have to speak on a very regular basis. Doesn't matter if it's national politics, boardroom politics, or family politics. A bit of rhetoric can go a long way. Now, it would easily take me weeks to go through all of the little rhetorical nuances in any given political campaign, and I have 16 minutes left. So I'm not going to go through everything. I'm going to cherry pick just a couple for you. Now, I do want to clarify something before we dive in, and that's what rhetoric is and what it isn't. What it isn't is pointless argumenting. What it isn't is asking questions that don't require an answer. What it is the art of persuasion. It's a really, really beautiful, complicated, intricate thing that, frankly, I all think we need a little bit more of in our lives. Now, when it comes to a political campaign, one of the things that the politician has to do right off the bat is get us to be willing to listen to him or her. This comes under the rhetorical area known as the appeals. And Aristotle, the great granddaddy of everything that is rhetoric, broke every single argument and speech down into 3 appeals. They are logos, appeal to logic, namely your logic, not necessarily mine, even if it isn't terribly logical. Logos is what we use to persuade people of something. You then move on to pathos, and that is the appeal to emotion. Now, pathos is not logos' pathetic little cousin. It's actually a very, very strong tool to use, because pathos is what convinces an audience to act, to go out there and cast their vote, or go out there and raise a ruckus. But the thing that the politician really needs to pay attention to on the election campaign is ethos. And ethos is the appeal to character. Namely, it's the person speaking appealing to the audience, saying, hey, the character that I have is exactly the character that you want in a leader. Ethos is what you use to get people to like you, or, in the case of many politicians, to hate you the least. That's very important. Now, you know you're in ethos territory when someone starts telling you how awesome they are, and all of the reasons why they're awesome. I am awesome because I'm patriotic. I am awesome because I'm educated. I am awesome because I have good down-home values. I'm awesome because I drink green juice in the morning. I'm awesome because I eat bacon and eggs, and that's traditional. Awesomeness and ethos is implied from just about any sort of signal that we can give someone. That being said, there's a few ways you can strategize communicating your ethos to be really, really targeted. The first manner is to use decorum, which is not about understanding which fork is for dessert and which is for salad. It is about manners, but it's all about adopting and using the manners that are socially acceptable within the group of people that you're speaking to at any given point in time. This does require the politician to be something of a chameleon, because you aren't going to use the same decorum for a church hall full of farmers as you are for a group of oil executives behind a closed-door gala. And changing the decorum that you use with different people isn't necessarily being duplicitous, not necessarily. It's doing what you have to do, but it does piss a lot of people off because it makes them seem like a chameleon. If they do it too often, or if they do it in a way that seems counterintuitive to their personality, we stop trusting them. And that can create a problem where you have become undecorous, where you've breached decorum. Now, decorum can be very subtle. It can be, say, Justin Trudeau's migrating shirt sleeves. That can be considered decorum. It can be very obvious. In Alberta, if you want to be decorous, if you want to do politics here, you had best be willing to stick on a cowboy hat, slap on an apron, and flip a goddamn pancake. You will do this, or so help me God, you will never do politics here again. And the thing is, we know that this is phony. We all know it. How many people here know the ass end of a horse from a camel? I don't. I've never even ridden one. But I am a proud Albertan. And so help me if a politician came here and said, I will not do this, I would be offended down to the very core of my fictional cowboy boots. And for most people, even though when someone is taking part in this, we say, oh yeah, they're mugging for the camera. If they refused, our response would probably be, hey, are you too good for our pancakes? We would not forgive them. And when someone breaches decorum, especially a politician, the outcome can be spectacular. When you're doing decorum right, you don't necessarily notice that it's happening. The person just blends in. Or you say, okay, they're playing the game, it's all good. But when you do it wrong, this happens. Decorum can easily be breached by wearing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. And thank you, politicians everywhere, for people like me who love hearing you say the wrong thing. It's so fun. It really is. Now, decorum isn't the only way that you can signal your ethos to an audience. You can also demonstrate what's known as your disinterest. That doesn't mean that you don't care about the people you're talking to. It means that you're able to put the interests of the people that you're addressing ahead of your own interests. As you can imagine, this is really, really important to an electorate who's concerned about corruption, because it demonstrates that the politician cannot be bought, in theory. However, disinterest is sometimes really difficult to communicate. There is, though, a genius down south, who is communicating disinterest and ethos in a way that I didn't think was possible, but the polls are showing that, remarkably, Donald Trump is actually really, really good at this ethos game. Many won't believe me because his mannerisms are indecorous to many of us. But you have to remember that he is appealing to a very, very conservative crowd. He is acting as a candidate for the Republican Party. He wants to be their nominee for the presidential election, so he has to follow their lines. And I want you to listen for the ways that he demonstrates not only his disinterest, but also his ethos to this group.
And he'll say, please, please, please. He'll beg for a little while, and I'll say, no interest. Then he'll call all sorts of political people, and I'll say, sorry, fellas, no interest, because I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I don't need anybody's money. I'm using my own money. I'm not using the lobbyists. I'm not using donors. I don't care. I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second. And by the way, I'm not even saying that in a bragging. That's the kind of mindset, that's the kind of thinking you need for this country. So.
Oh, I love that one person in the background. Absolutely! Hootenanny! So, this really is brilliant. He's outwardly expressing his disinterest. He's saying flat out, I'm not interested. I don't need the lobbyists' money. I don't need the donors' money. I can't be got because I'm so flippin' rich myself. And his statement, I'm really rich, might sound ridiculous on the surface, but it's loaded, absolutely loaded with ethos indicators. First up, it reinforces his disinterest, but also it communicates things like a strong work ethic, the sort of good, solid Protestant work ethic that lets you get ahead in life. It demonstrates business savvy and acumen. Someone who is really rich clearly knows a bit or they wouldn't be able to make that kind of money. This group of very conservative Republicans also appreciate the power that comes with wealth, social power, social standing. He's communicating all of that in this one little statement in the middle of an, I will say, bizarre talk. But he's hitting a chord deep with them. That's the power of ethos. Now it remains to be seen how he will be able to spin this so that his decorum, should he become the Republican candidate, so that his decorum matches with that of a more liberal crowd. Don't know if he'll be able to do it or not yet at any rate. But spin with ethos is important. Spin in other ways is very important. And now we come to the rhetoric of spin, also known as antherism, also known as redefining everything so it suits your purpose. Something doesn't suit you? Change its definition. This can be done very quickly, very frequently, and usually without us actually knowing and registering what's going on until maybe like 10 minutes after the talk where you say, wait a minute, what the hell just happened there? There's a couple different ways that you can redefine things. You can start with redefining terms. So you redefine the word itself. And you're not necessarily redefining the definition of the word, you're redefining the connotation of the word. Because words are very, very loaded. We have certain attitudes and feelings towards them. And if there's a certain word that is commonly in use to describe something you're doing and it gives the wrong attitude, you want to switch that out. And this one is very popular with politicians and shopaholics alike. It's not spending, it's investing. We're talking about the same activity, but it's different if it's investing. Spending is bad, investing is good. This is a pretty straight up method of aphorism for terms. The really fun aphorism though, the one that I like the most, is redefining entire issues. And this happens a lot. I'm going to start with a very, very blatant example. Once again, we're going to look down south. And you hear this especially within the Republican circles. They've got a bit of a gun violence problem. To say a bit is a bit of an it's a bit of an understatement. You've got a big gun violence problem. But they also have a voter base that is almost religiously devoted to what is actually a misreading, I have to say, of the Second Amendment. They are very devoted to this, and to suggest that you are going to even think about taking away their guns is not going to sit very well. That would be a serious breach of decorum. Don't you dare go there. But you can't ignore the gun issue. You cannot ignore the gun control issue. So you turn it into a mental health question. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. Sick people kill people, and we can talk about sick people. Boom, the issue has completely turned around to something that is much more palatable to their electorate. This isn't always, like we saw with the aphorism of the term, this isn't always so obvious. You'll see it used very frequently in debates and especially in interviews as well, when people are jockeying for position to see what issue they're actually going to talk about, so that they always are putting their best foot forward. And in a debate, it will look something like one of the debaters saying, I would like to discuss issue A. Mr. Opponent, what is your opinion on issue A? Answer me. What do you think? What do you think about issue A? And the opponent says, issue A is only half the story. Why are you ignoring issue B? Issue B has a great deal with issue A, and issue B is actually the thing we have to solve in order to resolve to issue A. So why, sir, will you not answer me about issue B? Now they're fighting over which issue they're actually talking about. And one of two things is going to happen. Either one of them is going to concede and discuss the issue that the opponent wants to discuss, or neither of them will give up any ground, they'll run out of time, and the moderator will end it. This happens a lot. And this happens buried within lots of other rhetorical devices as well. Because rhetoric doesn't happen one device or one rhetorical tool at a time. They're all piled on top of each other. They're cumulative. And to give you an idea of the cumulative effect that rhetoric can have on an argument or on a debate, we're going to have a look at a little example here. Let us revisit the Maclean's debates. This was a fun one. And we're going to look specifically about all of the instances where they use ethos and aphorisms in a 2-minute time span, only 2 minutes. And because, of course, learning is more fun with drinking, I've turned it into a drinking game. Aren't you lucky? So, anytime you hear the bell and see the annotation guiding you towards their very clever use of rhetoric, I want you to take a swig. And your glass had better be empty by the time that this is done.
One of the things that unfortunately Mr. Mulcair has been doing quite regularly is talking in French about his desire to repeal the Clarity Act, to make it easier for those who want to break up this country to actually do so. And in doing so, he's actually disagreeing with the Supreme Court judgment that said that one vote is not enough to break up the country. And anyone who wants to become Prime Minister not only should not say different things in French and in English, but should make sure that they side with the Supreme Court when it comes to unity of our country.
Mr. Mulcair, you get to answer that.
Well, I've fought for Canada my whole life. I fought in the 1980 referendum. I fought in the 1995 referendum. I spent 13 years in the National Assembly in Quebec City, and I was always consistent fighting for Canada. Now, I can understand it's a bit frustrating for the Liberals that for the first time in a full generation, Quebecers voted massively for a Federalist Party, and they wanted nothing to do with the Liberals, and it's easy to understand why. You just heard it. The only two people I know in Canada who are anxious to start talking about separatism again are Justin Trudeau and Gilles Duceppe. Mr. Trudeau has an obligation, if he wants to talk about this subject, to come clean with Canadians. What's his number? What is your number, Mr. Trudeau?
Well, first of all, Mr. Mulcair, I don't question your patriotism.
You have an answer.
The question is, why is your policy so reckless? You want a number, Mr.
Yeah,
Mulcair?
give us
I'll
a
give you a
number.
number. 9. My number is 9. 9 Supreme Court justices said one vote is not enough to break up this country, and yet that is...
I love this stuff. It's so fun. Can you imagine doing that throughout the entire 2.5 hours of the debate? You'd be plastered. Absolutely plastered. And I only touched on 2 of the rhetorical devices that were going on there. I didn't even look at, circumlocution, logos, changes in attack patterns, and appealing to ethos. Or one of my favorite tactics, which did occur there, honest to God, it's called babbling. It happened, and it can be used as a rhetorical tool. Now, when we're looking at stuff like this, again, the question comes to mind. Okay, so we know that this is going on. Why should we care? We need to care because even though we think that we're able to ignore it, even though we think we're able to see past it, we can't. It affects us on a very, very deep, almost subconscious level. But if we know what to expect and anticipate, we can look into it, we can pull it through, and then see what sort of things people are doing and people are saying to try to persuade us over to their way of thinking. Like I said, it actually makes us more critical in a more competent and more discerning way. And of course, you can then take these lovely tools that you discover through studying a bit of rhetoric, getting a little bit more rhetoric into your life, as well as through watching things like politicians at work during the campaigns, and apply them within your own life. You need to make a difficult presentation to the stakeholders? Maybe you need to use a few aphorisms once they start to ask you some tricky questions. Keep putting your best foot forward. If you need to, say, give a Nerd Nite talk. I know that some of you out here have a Nerd Nite talk in you, and the stage and the microphone are waiting, but maybe you're afraid that the audience isn't going to like you, or that we're going to think you're boring, or that you don't know what we're talking about. Tell us how awesome you are. Use a little bit of ethos. Show us a little bit of the, hey, you like me because I'm like you love. You can absolutely use this for your own ends. It really does enrich in your ability to communicate, and even more so, despite what we may think, because there is so much duping and manipulation within political campaigns, it can actually be used to create a much stronger and clearer connection with the people who you are speaking with and who you are trying to reach. Can we take some questions?
Lauren, and also thank you for the Nerd Nite recruitment. That was awesome.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm happy to recruit people.
I love this Lauren business. I think it's really confusing.
Actually, I think it's easier because you only have to remember one name.
Perfect. Okay, so we have time. We have about 10 minutes for questions. Does anyone have questions for the lovely Lauren?
Don't be shy.
In the back.
Do I just shout?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so I was recently teaching my students a Malcolm Gladwell essay in which he argues that evidence of humanity getting stupider is the difference in the quality of a presidential address from, say, Abraham Lincoln versus the quality of a presidential address from George W. Bush. And I was trying to suggest to my students that in fact they are equally good rhetoricians, but rather that the electorate has changed.
Ding, ding, ding.
So can you just
Yep.
give me some language to argue that?
Happily. Okay, let's argue a little bit for your students. First up, are all campaigners and politicians made equal? No, of course not. And I don't dare compare the intellect of Abraham Lincoln against that of George Bush, but maybe Abe Lincoln had a really dumb contrary runner in his campaign. I'm not sure. I don't know who else was involved. It's possible. But also, rhetoric and the way we speak is subject to fashion. It's very strongly subject to fashion. Language isn't constant. It changes all the time. And the way that we process information changes along with the language. So the expressions are going to be totally different. The way that Lincoln was speaking in something like the Gettysburg Address was consistent with the way his public was used to hearing people speak. It was consistent with the norms of the day. The way that George Bush speaks, the way that Obama speaks, the way that Trudeau speaks is consistent with the way that we speak today. If George Bush tried to speak like Lincoln, we'd think he was really weird. Really weird. If Justin Trudeau came out in a stovepipe hat, we would think he was crazy. Because things change. So to make that call that we're dumber now than we were back then is actually it's a completely false argument. We're not dumber, we're different.
Boom. I like that.
Rhetoric!
Do we have more questions? I feel like people need to jump up and do a dance for your questions.
Sort of a tie with that, can you speak to what you perceive the effect of the internet to be and texting, sort of the new evolution of language that way on rhetoric?
The internet's changed language in much the same way that any form of new technology tends to change language. Language changed when the telephone was invented, when the telegraph was invented, when the printing press was invented. Things changed to suit the technology of the time. So that is definitely happening. One thing that has occurred that is observable is that we now speak faster than we used to. Not sure why. To be totally honest, I'm really not sure why. But we do speak slightly faster nowadays than we used to in the past. Quite a while ago in the 1950s, let's say, well, not let's say, I actually do know this. In the 1950s, what was considered a really good rate of speech for someone giving a talk up here was about 145 to 160 words a minute. Now it's closer to 180 to 195 words a minute. So we've sped up. Things are a little bit different. Is it technology that's doing that? Maybe, because we're used to processing more information in one big go. So maybe that's one of the reasons why things have changed. But language changes every time a technology shifts. I thought I saw another hand.
Do you feel
John.
that logos is kind of missing from these debates? That it's more ethos and pathos?
Can you just repeat the question?
He was wondering if logos is missing from these debates as opposed to just ethos and pathos. This is fun. I really wanted to talk more about logos, but there wasn't time. Thank you, sir, for giving me the time. Logos is definitely present in the debates, but logos is neither necessarily logical, nor reasonable, nor rational. Logos is actually just about appealing to your audience's worldview. So their logic might be like completely out there, but what you want to do is construct an argument that fits in with that really weird logic that they're applying. Logos doesn't, like I said, mean reasonable. It doesn't mean that it's right. It just means that it follows a specific construct where you're trying to make yourself sound reasonable according to the worldview of everyone that you're speaking to. So it's rife. It's rife in these debates. Just doesn't always look like it. That's what makes it fun. Okay.
Any last questions? Right here.
Hi.
Do you live tweet any of these debates, like while you're watching them?
If I'm watching them live, yes, I do. By the way, I live tweet Nerd Nite like crazy.
It's true.
Oh yes, I love it. If I'm watching them live, then yes, I do. But alas, a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old kind of prevented me from watching most of these live this year. That and they sort of tie up your hands, so there's no Twitter thumbs going on. Yes?
So there was a criticism of Mulcair during the debates that he was a little creepy.
Yes!
Is that like an ethos misdelivery? Or
Yes! It is! Thank you for dropping that square in my lap. I wanted to talk about his weird smile, but I only had 20 minutes.
And the eyes. You gotta talk about the eyes.
Oh, I gotta talk. Yeah, did you see him getting really angry in that clip? Like, just everything in his body language, that stare became fixed and the jaw became clenched. The person that we all knew from question period was Angry Tom. And it was felt that Angry Tom needed to become Smiling Tom to be more appealing on the conference circuit, on the election campaign circuit. So he was instructed to smile more, to be more friendly, to hitch up that weird little grin, the creepy grin that got him absolutely mocked in the media, in social media and in traditional media alike. It was a tactic that they tried to use to make him more likable. I think that it didn't work because it was too much of a shift. I remember how I did say that if you shift too much, people distrust you. Where did Angry Tom go? We knew Angry Tom. Some of us liked Angry Tom. Please bring Angry Tom back. But no, instead they brought him in. That was absolutely a strategy, and I think a very misplayed one. Yes?
What did Justin Trudeau do from the not ready to become successful?
Can you just repeat that?
What did Justin Trudeau do to get over the I'm not ready? First up, he performed the way he did in the debates. That was actually very, very well done. Came across a little awkwardly at first in the McLean's debates, but he really did pick up on it. Secondly, he used a rhetorical strategy wherein you acknowledge the thing that your opponent is flinging at you, I'm not ready, and you spin it, you use an aphorism to turn it in your favor. Harper says, I'm not ready. The Conservatives say, I'm not ready. You're right. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for another 10 years of mismanagement. I'm not ready for X. I'm not ready for Y. I'm not ready for Z. So he actually redirected his attention away from him being not ready to us being not ready to carry on with the current government. I see one over there. Do we have time?
Yes.
Good.
I'm not responsible enough to watch debates. I would totally watch them if it was like pop-up video.
I went through like a bottle of wine doing that, by the way.
Do you do that? Like, do you post those on YouTube? Because like I would watch them.
I think you have a new business here, Lauren.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I have a new activity on my plate. Sure, I'll do a few. I'll put this one up and I'll do a few more. It'll be fun.
But will they play at high school dances?
Oh, it all depends on how nerdy the high school is.
Are there any last questions?
Randy.
Yes.
Hello.
Lauren, hello. Do you think politicians are more careful in debates like this of saying the wrong thing? Like when Prentice said to Rachel Notley, I know math is hard. I mean, that was, the bottom just fell out right there at that moment. You know, the hashtag math is hard took off in about 3 seconds.
He was the hashtag king. He really was. Should they be more careful?
Or are
yes.
they? Do you think they are?
I
mean, it's a tough question to answer.
It's a super tough question because the amount of adrenaline and excitement and anxiety and everything that's pumping through their systems when they're up debating like that is gigantic. Is absolutely gigantic. It's like a full-on boxing match. So even if they're trying to be careful, sometimes things just come out the wrong way. And you have to roll with it. So yes and no. The answer is it's really hard. I actually respect them a great deal because of how hard these things really are to do and to do well.
Right there.
Hi.
Hi. I'm hoping maybe you can just give me what like the name for this term could be, so I can like look into it more myself. I'm really interested in you know, when you get like a Mark Rubio or a Jeb Bush on stage and they don't want to appear pro-illegal immigration. However, at the same time, when Donald Trump gets up and starts talking about the wall he wants to build, they also don't want to look pro the wall. So they have to back up away from, you know, the far right that Trump is presenting, while at the same time not appearing to be on the opposite side of the issue. Mm-hmm. Is there a name for that strategy?
There is, of course, either a Greek or a Latin name for the strategy, and to be honest, I can't remember what it is, but what that strategy is to do is to make yourself seem more moderate to appeal to a wider variety of people within your audience. So, and often what they'll do is, to make themselves seem more moderate, is they'll actually present both extremes of a viewpoint. Well, we can't open the floodgates and we can't build a wall, but we can do this. And people in general tend to appreciate a more moderate standpoint because it usually fits in with our worldview, with our logos, that we are reasonable, rational people. So yeah, taking that middle ground is absolutely a very, very, very useful tactic. I wish I could give you the term. There's like a billion of them.
I'm sure you can tweet that later.
I'll tweet it later.
Yeah.
I'll look it up when I get home and tweet it later.
Okay, we have one more question. Last question. Right there.
I'm going to stand up so I can project.
Thank you, sir. I teach people to do that.
Actually, on the topic of like internet arguments, there's a thing called Godwin's Law, which is eventually someone gets compared to Hitler.
Yep.
It's obviously an ethos attack, but is there a version of this logos, ethos, pathos that always wins, or is it more like a rock, paper, scissors thing?
Rock, paper, scissors. There's never a version that is always going to win because everybody is different and everyone comes at these arguments from a different angle. That's why it's so damn tricky.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. That was fascinating.
So much for having me. This is great.
And please start your pop-up video company.
I will start some pop-up videos.
You have loyal followers.
Oh my God, it's going to be in the middle of the night while I'm up with my baby, like, logos, okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And once I figure out how to work this laptop, I will start the timer. You have 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, to get new drinks, to come back and be ready.